Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Uranium Energy. It is time for another update, and it's been a while since we last covered this stock, but not much has been happening really. This chart wasn't providing to us any edge, any high probability setup to be looking out for, but this changes today because we have finally managed to fulfill an initial 5 move to the upside within a smaller time frame, which allows us to look for a high probability trade setup, which allows us to look for continuation to higher prices still, as long as we hold the internal levels of support. And before we get into those details, let's provide some quick context for this chart. We have been tracking this idea of a diagonal structure, right? We have identified a fair bit ago that this was going to fail, creating the idea of an impulse, and we have been looking for this wave 5 even to only build a 3-wave pattern as a result of that conclusion. Since we have fulfilled all of those expectations, we needed to be prepared that a more substantial top would be in place even within this as a large wave 1 in white, if not something even more like a wave 1 in blue that would be suggesting an even larger correction. Nonetheless, we've had this support zone in white as the minimum target for the larger structure for a more reliable setup, but we haven't held back from looking also for possible extensions within this structure, because extensions are always possible, right? So we've been tracking this green scenario where instead of reaching this white area of support, we would form one additional high within this wave 5 in white, thus extending this larger wave 1 in white. We haven't been too inclined to believe that this would be happening. We did only have a 3-wave move to the downside within this as a potential wave B correction, but we didn't have a 5-wave move up, not an initial one that reached its area of support anyway. So we've been focusing on different opportunities on the market. I believe we've done wonderfully, but now it is time to get back to this chart because we have finally formed within the smaller time frame an initial 5-wave move to the upside in this reversal from the latest low. At this point, I would strongly prefer that if we are to extend higher within this wave C in green, that this wave B would have already bottomed. I can still see the possibility of a reset, but I really do not like that interpretation. So for the purposes of simplicity, we will be focusing on the internal area of support for such a structure. We will be watching the levels between $14.7 all the way down to $12.8 for continuation to higher prices within this wave C, within the area of an impulse, since we have 5 waves within the wave 1. Then we also have to consider levels of resistance to watch out for, because even though we only have 3 waves down, and we do prefer higher prices, nothing is preventing this structure to only form a 3-wave move to the upside instead. So I would be watching a rather pretty generic area of resistance. I would be watching the levels between $14.6 all the way up to $18.1, and I actually find this to be rather important to watch, as quite clearly we can notice how faithfully we have reacted to each of these Fibonacci retracement levels, right? We have pushed into the 38.2% retracement, rejected. 50% retracement, a few times, but nonetheless rejected every single time. The 61.8% retracement most recently rejected. So we can expect, even if we are to succeed in following through within this idea of a wave 3 in green, that quite possibly we would get rejected at a 78.6% retracement. Not a guarantee by any means, but something to watch out for, alright? Now, in the internal structure, I won't bore you with the structure of the wave 1. I am tracking a leading diagonal, but I am looking and focusing rather on the wave 2 correction itself. I could see this correction take a pretty substantial amount of time. I'm not looking at hours or maybe not even days when it comes to this correction. I could see it take 1-2 weeks, maybe even more than that realistically. I would of course be looking at the internal structure to get a better idea when I would have a bottom in place, rather than focus on the timeline itself, but as a rough estimation, I would envision this to be something like this possibly. Within this we could bottom somewhere around early June. If we are to form a very short and quick correction in this area, I might rather need to consider that a different path is forming, but even in this expectation, we could still see it extend into the next week very easily. If we are to form a correction, that is a rather short one, it might still work out, but I would still typically expect it to take longer than what we have had within an internal wave 2 or this is an internal wave 4, because this is of a larger degree. We expect the larger degree corrections to be larger. In terms of the structure of this correction, I could be looking at this to be even an initial 5-week move to the downside. So I would be faithfully watching for the levels of resistance between $15.5 all the way up to $16.4. I am looking for a 3-wave correction into such a resistance area. We have actually checked all of these marks. And after that, I would be looking for at least another 5-week move to the downside. How exactly that unfolds? Well, I would probably prefer for this to be building a larger 3-wave pattern within a larger 3-wave pattern. And that is because if we are to build a 5-wave pattern with such a large wave 1, well, that's actually a pretty great warning sign that as we complete the entire 5-wave structure, we would get towards the last level of resistance. We would be building, sure, a pretty substantial relief rally potentially, but then we would still expect with high probabilities at least another 5-wave move to the downside. So if I see such a pattern form in this movement to the downside, a 5-wave pattern, not a 3-wave pattern, I would rather need to expect that this setup is rather going to fail. We would be losing trust if this were to form instead a 5-wave move to the downside. We do not want to see an initial 5-wave move to the downside. We want to see a 3-wave correction that could potentially extend within a larger ABC structure eventually as it further develops. And I will of course be keeping a close eye on these developments, and if there is new relevant information I will keep you up to date. But as it stands right now, I am looking ideally to build a wave C within this movement to the downside, or maybe even a 5-wave pattern if we get a larger, deeper wave 2 correction, because then the wave 3 wouldn't need to go necessarily as deep. And then we get a wave 4 and a wave 5, and then we build a larger A, B, C pattern, but you get the idea. We don't want to be forming a 5-wave pattern into the last level of resistance. That would be rather suggesting that eventually this structure will be failing. Then I do not remember if I already mentioned this, but if we manage to push directly higher and break the last level of resistance sustainably, I would rather be tracking an extension within this wave 1 in green, or potentially a completely different structure. That would not be the wave 3 already forming for me. This is not the wave 2 bottom, that much is clear. And for now, we will stop here. These are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed the content and want to support it directly, check out the channel membership, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.